Hello, I'm back, so let's continue.
晩餐を終えてしばらくおしゃべりをして夜も更けた。送っていくわ。馬車を出すから少し待って。大丈夫、心配しないで。表通りで馬車かガーニーを拾うから。そう？あれ、歩かないんだメアリー。前なら遅くても歩いてたよね。テムズまで1時間もかかるのに。酔いざましにちょうどいいって言ってさ。もしかして信じてるのかなって。あの噂はっきりとは言わないけど、まさかただの噂でしょ。だよね。ほらほら、2人とも夜道が危ないことは変わりないでしょ。
I have the bad feeling that these aren't just rumors. But who knows?
お願いね。はい、お嬢様。馬車組合には電信を入れてあります。わお、用意がいいのねドナ。すごい。ワオだなんて身体陸風の言い回しは彼氏の
What?
何二人ともびっくりした顔して。どうしたの？安心しただけ。あとちょっぴりの嫉妬心かしら。
Jealous?
ね。
Why is that?
私に振らないで。そうね、安心とちょっと羨望。何が？何が？そう言って笑う様はやっぱりいつも通りのシャーリーだった。だから方々を抜けてテムズ沿岸の住宅地帯に着く頃には、揺れる馬車に攪拌される自分とアルコールの周りに振り回されて、胸の奥の小さな疑問を私は忘れてしまっていた。
The driver worried about her as she climbed out of the carriage, but despite the staggering, Mary managed to walk up to her lodging house. She rang the bell, even that faint sound echoed through her head.
あらま
Who's that?
あ、かわいい小鳥さんがたたらなんて踏んで。
Miss Hudson.
近頃はあまりこういうこともなかったのに、またワインをいただいてしまったのかし
Yeah,
ら。
you shouldn't do that.
はい、ごめんなさいミセスハドソン。
Hadusin.
ミセスハドソン、私が借りている下宿の大家さん。お母様の古いお友達、クローディアさんとも仲が良くて、とっても優しい人だけど、こんな日こんな夜は少し厳しい。シャーリーの家にいたんです。ついワインを。
Does she want to water the flowers, or why is she carrying that with her?
ワインはダメって言ったでしょ。あなた醸造酒には点で弱いのだし。
はい。
And it is harmful for your body.
気をつけてねメアリー。あまり顔に出ないたちだからいいけれど。若い女性が酔ったまま歩くだなんてみっともいいものじゃないのだから
Yeah,
ね。
that's right.
はい。すみませんミセスハドソン。
反省なさいね。反省した？ならよろしい。おやすみなさいメアリー・クリスティ。良い夜をね。それとこれ電報ね。
ありがとうございます。おやすみなさいミセスハドソン。
Telegrams, huh? From who might those be?
ワインを飲むといつもそうだわ。ミセスハドソンに怒られて。
While shrinking from shame and resisting the urge to look down, Mary took the telegram envelopes and walked up the stairs under the warm roof. She opened the door to a room, a first-floor room facing the famous... or Themse, how we say in Germany.
少し疲れた息を一つ。ため息ほど重くなく、呼吸ほど軽くなく。
The room, having been empty as night fell, was pleasantly cool and her breath was white.
ただいま。おかえり。
Well, if her breath is white, isn't it a little bit too cold? She dropped the stack of envelopes on her bed and turned her key in the heating engine attached to the wall. Was it winter? Small, low rumbling noises started up. The noise of the small engine assigned to her room made her head shake a little. She tapped her forehead and held her hands up to the air from the heating engine. Warm. She felt it when returning to her room alone.
この街は寒い。一人きりでいると特に。
A stove or fireplace would warm it up, but since those were expensive, she had a heating engine. It was almost pitiful. It would have been nice if she could find the time for something other than schoolwork or writing. Such as, yes, it bothered her that her room was always a mess when she came home. She did try to keep it clean. She tried, but it was far from perfect. She thought this a lot when she got back from seeing Donna cook and keep Charlie's house so skillfully. It looks rather clean to me. She suddenly remembered the latest fully automatic housekeeping device. They were supposed to do all household chores entirely on their own. Of course, they were expensive, more so than an actual maid. And that wasn't it. She wanted it, but that wasn't it. What she really wanted was to take care of herself. She wanted to avoid making others help her. She wanted to do everything she was interested in and all the tasks she had to get done. But...
でも、私は知ってる。自分一人では何もできない。
what's that? You just have to try. She couldn't even bake bread. No, she could bake, but that was all. She'd end up spending the entire day baking it, unable to do anything else. All cooking and cleaning was like that. She wanted to get more things done in a day, without worrying Miss Hudson, and without feeling pressed for time.
やりたいことはたくさんある。でも、欲張ってもね。欲張っても仕方がないから。だからとりあえず今夜は課題かな。
She thought about getting changed for a moment, but instead sat down on a desk in outdoor clothes. She took a notebook out of her bag and opened it. She'd do this now, then change into her pajamas after taking a bath. This homework was due on Monday. She'd like to get it done before going to sleep. Which day is it today?
必修のカダスチオ古語の翻訳。これはなかなか。
The Royal College was for exceptionally high-level education, so the homework was difficult.
皇后文じゃないか。石碑文かし
The
ら。
monument version, where's the difference? She thought Kudathian was very similar to the language of a certain small country in the Far East. The objects came after the subject. They say it was a hard language, but once you get used to it, it's no problem at all. She could follow conversations in the spoken version within a month. But parsing Old Kudathian was extremely hard. Even after half a year, she was still far from mastering it. This was the first time it ever taken Mary so long to learn a language. Even in Kadath, they didn't use it much. Apparently it only came up in the literature of prehistoric cultures. What was it like in Latin? But for some reason, the Royal College required her to learn that difficult and rarely used language.
ここはセレネル？セレナリア？
Oh, is it a reference to the first game of the steampunk series? What was its name? Soteno Serenaria, I think. What a beautiful word.
セレナリアかしら。うん、そうね。
At its core, Kudathian was a representative language that made it even harder to tell nouns, verbs, and adjectives apart. The dictionaries weren't that great either. They were given an Asian pictographic character dictionary and a pocket dictionary on Egyptian hieroglyphs. She thought they were joking, but apparently they weren't.
世界かな、これは。
Whenever she got stuck, she had to guess the meaning from the context. She got it right surprisingly often that way. Of course, she didn't know if that still applied when drunk. She suddenly remembered something about Angie, something about her grades in old monument Kudathian being so high she got drafted to work on special engines over there. Apparently there was a rumor like that, but it was fake, like a bad dime novel from the New World. But the Kadath Central Northern Empire's prehistoric culture research team did pique Mary's interest as a student of historical science in general, since that included archaeology. If she could be part of that, she would be much more motivated to learn it.
でも、そうなったらみんなとは離れ離れ。でも、母さんとは暮らせるかもしれない。でも、
Then, the bell timer on the heating engine rang, so she couldn't overuse it late at night. To be precise, it was the timer on the boiler connected to the heating engine, the one that popped out as much hot water as you want.
沸いちゃった。お風呂入ろう。
Oh, do you take us with you? The alcohol had to be out of her system by now. It'd be good to soak in warm water now. She'd think more after washing herself, after taking her time in the bath. And I don't even have to censor anything. How convenient.
ため息。今度は大きなため息。
Because her hair's in the way.
体中から疲れやあれやこれやが抜ける。すっごく気持ちいい。
Bathing was important since the air in London was so dirty. The smoke from the engine filled the sky, darkened the famous and killed the birds. There was even soot mixed into the shroud of mist. Even with a parasol, fine particles of soot would always get in your hair and on your clothes. Also, that's why she's always carrying a parasol around. So she had to clean off all that soot with hot water. She immersed herself in the bath filled with hot water. The temperature control didn't work, so it was always very hot water.
肩まで浸かりたいわ。その方が気持ちいいと思うのに。どうしてこうバスタブの底は浅いのかしら。
The only way to get deep in is to lay sideways, and that just made her feel sleepy. Though according to a Far East exchange student who is friends with Mr. Heinz, they had much deeper baths where he lived. She sighed again, her body swirled around within the hot water.
そろそろアルコールが抜けたかしら。
The sensation of one's thoughts returning to normal. She remembered a number of things as it happened. A number of things that happened today. A herd of memories gathering dust in the corner of her mind. Charlie's expression, a somewhat dark expression she normally never saw.
何か心配事。次に会うときは理由を聞かないと。
She had many things to worry about. Yes, before she knew it, her memories all turned to worries. So did things she hadn't thought about at the time. For instance, Angie's words just before they got in the carriage.
あの噂、怖いやつ。言葉を思い出すのと同時に、私は自然と右のまぶたを押さえて。
I wonder if there's a connection. Cool, refreshing air after a bath, only a brief moment of comfort. It would have felt nice to stay naked like this, but Mary would have caught a cold in no time. As cold air mixed with warm touched her skin, she threw her outer clothes into the automatic washing engine and changed into her pyjamas.
よし。課題終わらせよっと。
She didn't spend too long drying her hair, then she went to a wooden desk and continued her homework, while wondering if her mother or Charlie would get angry. Whoops, I skipped something. We can't have that. She thought they might, but after only 2 hours she was already done with multiple pages. It took no time at all. The homework was just one booklet, and she'd been prepared to spend all night on it. The flow of this monument excerpt was very similar to the previous homework. She told herself that had to be it. This past year, her analysis of old languages and European ruins had always ended quickly. Her grades had shot up too. Yes, ever since her right eye changed. Oh, did it make her bright? Intelligent? She chose history as her subject because there were so many lectures to choose from. It was easy to focus on old stories. It wasn't because she was particularly interested in ancient history. That still hadn't changed, and yet for some reason she was doing much better. She could imagine her eyes changing color changed the way her brain worked. Why did her eye change in the first place? Charlie said you must be growing up. Angie just said must be nice. For her, it just felt mysterious.
もうちょっと。あれ、もう終わりっていいの？
Just a little over 2 hours. One small booklet. It almost felt like she was missing something. Mary rolled into the bed as if slowly falling out of her chair. She picked up the envelopes she'd put there earlier, one local telegram and one international telegram. The local one was from her uncle, a message from Uncle George. Uncle
またお
George.
じさんたらエンジンフォンを使えばいいのに。
Engine phone, a wireless telecommunication device, a machine making long-distance conversation possible. Mary's engine phone was a fashionable pocket watch type. Charlie had given it to her. Apparently, she had made it herself. Or is it like its cell phone then? Though the company hadn't gone public yet, so at the time she almost got arrested for telecommunication law violation. No, they could laugh about it, but back then, half a year ago, there was a huge commotion. Her uncle's face had been pale. That was probably part of the reason he sent telegrams instead, but her uncle was rather old-fashioned.
少し嬉しい。私のことを思ってくれるおじさん。
Even though he was busy, he kept visiting, but unlike the telegrams, that was very rare. She was sure he was worried. He was her only relative in London, after all. Just as she thought, a series of words that expressed nothing but concern.
夜道に気をつけろ。男性に気をつけろ。戸締まりも当然のごとく気をつけろ。
Of other men? So, other men like himself, or what's he talking about?
それと、夜のシティエリアを出歩くな。絶対に出歩くんじゃない。
夜のシティエリアを出歩くな。人のいない暗がりにはメタクリッターが出る。婿の娘を襲って殺す。
That was the sort of rumor making the city of London nervous. A scary story running rampant throughout the city.
噂。またあの噂。ほんの一瞬、私はドキリとしたけど。何よこれ。おじさんが噂を信じちゃったら本末転倒。
Somehow, she was just barely alright. She wasn't falling into a weird daydream, nor was she crying. She even had the wherewithal to smile slightly. What does a wherewithal mean? Because she remembered her uncle's cheerful face. He called himself a realist all the time, but when he worried about his niece, what was and wasn't real stopped mattering. Mary remembered her uncle's stern face and smiled again.
あれで可愛いとこあるんだから。
He'd probably be furious if she said that, so she kept it to herself.
あとは
Who was the international telegram from? She knew without looking at the sender's name.
母様だ。母様からの電報。いつものように1ページだけ。
Her mother moved to another country when she decided to enter the Royal College. She went to the Central Northern Empire of Kadarth. Her mother worked as a scholar in engine science, a member of the Honorable Ada Research Organization. The Ada Research Organization? She left for the other side of the ocean. That's why Mary had to live in this lodging house. At first she was lonely, but...
もう慣れた。そう。シャーリーもアーシーもいる。みんながよくしてくれる。だから、私は一人でも平気。平気よ、母様。だから何も心配することなんてない。
The telegram was the same as always. Unlike her uncle, her mother wrote about her life. Telling her all these details about the organization could get her accused of espionage, though. Her mother wrote happily about things for a while, then ended it with the same line as always. Take care of yourself, my beloved Mary Clarissa.
母様。大丈夫よ、私。
She reached out from the bed and placed the telegram on the table. She closed her right eye and softly touched the eyelid. It was always like this after reading Mother's telegrams. She always felt like this. As she wondered when to tell Mother about her right eye, she lied down on the bed. Or she didn't tell her yet. She didn't want to worry her. She didn't want to do anything that might worry her mother on the far side of the ocean. Which was why she always fell asleep like this.
そうだ。続き書かないと。
There was a story she hadn't finished writing, the one Charlie asked for more of.
シャーリー、思い出す。彼女の横顔。どこか暗いあの陰り。
Tonight was the same as any other night, but that difference in her expression made Mary's head quiver. Quivering, something boiling up from deep within her, a sensation she couldn't describe, something too unfamiliar. For just a moment it felt like she'd wake up, but that didn't last long. Sleep covered her consciousness. There was nothing she could do to resist it.
私はゆっくりと眠りの中へ。今度は白昼夢ではなくて正真正銘の夢。ささやき声がする。耳元でささやく誰かの声。私の知っている人の声じゃない。
Who might this voice belong to?
何を言っているのかわからなくて私は振り返ろうとしてでもできなくて私はそう走っているんだ。これは続き。きっとあの白昼夢の続き。今度はすぐに気づいた。そこは私の知るロンドンではなくてもっとずっと暗い明かりの薄い場所。
Where might this be?
友達と歩き慣れたはずの街並みはいびつなものへと歪んでしまった。ひどく歪んでひどく暗くて きれいに敷き詰められたはずの石畳もぐにゃりと曲がって、私は誰かに助けを求めようとした。ああ、そうだ、誰もいないのだと思う。そんなはずない、そんなはずはないのに、歪んでしまった暗がりのロンドンに私一人。ささやき声、いいえ違うわ、これは叫び声。私は走る。叫び声を上げる誰かが迫ってくるから。叫び声、叫び声、一つの声であるはずなのにいくつも響く。恐ろしいほどのそれは頭蓋を揺らし、私の理性をバラバラにする。自然と声が出た、震える声が。私の足は何かにつかまれてしまう。ダメ、ダメ、走らなきゃ。逃げて、逃げて、逃げて、逃げて。私の足はつかまれているから身動きができない。叫び声が聞こえる。私の背中のすぐ。あなたは誰？
メアリー。
そして私は。
I thought the opening was playing again for a moment there. What? It's Angie.
大きな声、弾むように明るくて。
The sky's sunlight shone through the window, and Mary felt the presence of warm curtains. Signs of morning air. She could hear the twitter of birds, despite how few there were now. She was torn out of her slumber without consent. After rubbing her eyes, Mary opened them and...
おはよう。もう午前10時ですよ。寝すぎだよ。
もうちょっと寝かせて。
ダメ。
Angie was sitting on the corner of the bed, smiling brightly. She was looking at Mary and as if she couldn't wait to get going.
数学の課題が昨日で終わったの。だから今日はみんなで遊びに行こう。ハイドパークのパレスアート公園はどう？今日はきっと隙間も見えると思うの。
The Crystal Palace ruins?
もうちょっと。
今朝ね、起きて思いついてエンジンフォンしたらシャーリーがいいわねって言ってくれたの。だからね。
本で起こしてくれればいいのに。
ほら早く早く起きて起きて。下でシャーリーも待ってるんだよ。ガーニーも待機中。
え？ガーニーが待機中。
What the fuck is a gurney? She rubbed her sleepy eyes, jumped out of bed and pulled back the curtains. I actually looked it up, and a gurney is a transportation device with which you carry injured people. So I don't know what they look like here. A gurney on the street between a building and the Thames and Charlotte Bronte next to it.
シャーリー、こちらを見上げて手を振って。わかった。わかりました。アーシェの行動力はロンドン一だわ。
そっかな。
すぐに着替えるから少し待っていてね。
However, Mary already had plans for this Saturday. She wanted to write more, but... Yes, write more. The rest of that story she was writing.
でも
Well, maybe it could wait. There was no rush to get it done or anything. Her homework was done, so she'd have fresh time later. She didn't have a deadline anyway.
さあ、急いで急いで。
はーい。慣れない速度。景色が次々に後ろへと流れていく。ガーニーに乗られて、私たちは大通りを西へと抜ける。
Every time Mary rode in a gurney, she thought the city was changing. The steel vehicle moved faster than a carriage and made the scenery outside look like a painting. Well, it is basically a painting. It's drawn. That was why those thoughts came to mind. The city had been thoroughly engulfed in grey smoke. Engine smoke even changed the color of the fog. It changed so much, Mary could tell it had, even compared to her childhood. Even now, that faint but beautiful sunlight had appeared, peeking through gaps in the sky.
都市はよどんでいる。そしてそれは続いていく。
Just as the old man said, the reports of smoke pollution increased every day. The docklands would be unusable in the near future, the day when they'd have to rely on airships, and Zeppelins like the Cardathian Empire wasn't far off. There could even come a day when the drawbridges on the 4 tower bridges stopped working because of all the soot.
それでも私はロンドンが好き。 幼い頃を過ごしたこの都市が好き。二人の親友が暮らすここが好き。ハイドパークの空が好き。美しく輝くほんのわずかなものが好き。
The gurney driver spoke. The fog and clouds are really nice today, so Hyde Park look great, he said. The fog and the clouds, Mary still couldn't tell when they were good or bad. She knew when she was a child, but now she couldn't tell the difference. Then, as they approached the West End, Angie pulled on their sleeves, as if clinging to both Charlie and Mary.
ライシウム劇場
Lyceum Theatre?
来週はみんなであそこ行こう。ヘンリー・アービング様を見よう。
私、シェイクスピア俳優の中でアービング様が一番好き。
Is he also a real person?
あら、そうなの？メアリーはもっと背の高い人が好みだと思っていたのだけど。
なんでそうなるの？
Kind of cute mouth she has there.
なんとなく。
私は別に背の高さとか気にすることはなくて、それ以前に。
そうだよね。メアリーは初恋がまだだもんね。
それは
Why is it a secret? It's not something you have to feel bad about.
ともかくみんなで劇場ね。チケットはアーシャが用意するから。そうね。ええ、みんなで見に行きましょうね。みんなで。
あれ？シャーリー、またあなた、今、表情がいつもと違う。
She was completely different from the usual Charlie. The girl's sentence was left unfinished and her expression darkened.
昨日の時と同じ。なぜ？
Green trees and a huge field. One could see a lot of gentlemen here with ladies on the weekend. It was once a hunting ground for Henry VIII, and now it was called Hyde Park. If you fancied a pleasant stroll within London, here and Regent's Park would be the best choices, one of the few green areas in the engineized city. Kind of reminds me of something, that picture here. As a borough, Hyde Park was a wealthy area, sometimes called the center of British social life or the borough of modern-day aristocrats. Of course, to young girls who went aristocrats, it was just a nice park filled with greenery. Sometimes they even called it a place where you can see the city's treasure. Yes, treasure. Apparently, this was the only place in Britain. A miracle that appeared in the sky about a year ago, a real one and acknowledged by the Pope himself. Mary remembered that day, the day the grey sky parted. Sunlight appeared in the sky above London, gaps formed in the sky above Hyde Park, the city went wild.
はっきりと覚えてる。私もみんなと同じに空を見上げた。その瞬間、なぜだか右目から涙が溢れて。
Before Mary realized it, her right eye had turned golden. Compared to the change in the world's sky, it was very smiley went. Yes, the world's sky, not just London's. They say these two miracles took place all over the world. The same phenomenon was seen in several major cities across the world. The engine revolution made cities enginize, filling the sky with smoke, making the world lose its sun. And yet, an eternally grey sky. It shouldn't have been possible to see the sun again, and yet... Mary, Charlie and Angie, none of the young people knew the old sky. Much less the sun, they only knew black and white seal-cut pictures from long ago. And yet, 1 year ago, a miracle occurred. The grey clouds didn't disappear at all, nor did they seal the sky's true hidden color, but... faint sunlight came down through the thick grey clouds of smoke.
そして、わずかな場所には隙間が。光あふれる空の隙間。
Mary remembered it, how excited Charlie was. The strange worldwide phenomena called miracles made Charlie's eyes glitter. She grabbed every newspaper she could. She glared at articles and information as if competing with announcements in scientific publications. She'd never seen Charlie so...
メアリー？ぼーっとしていたけど大丈夫？また…
違うの、大丈夫。ちょっと考えてただけ。
そう？ならよかったわ。一安心。
Charlie held a handkerchief in her right hand. She looked worried. For a moment, Mary wondered why, but then she realized and blushed.
そっか、白チュームかと思われたのね。ぼーっとしてたから。逆に心配されちゃうだなんて。
どうしたの二人とも。ゆっくりしてると置いてっちゃうよ。はいはい、待ってくださいな、おてんばなお姫様。ほら、キティちゃんも遅れないでちょうだいね。 キティって。
She was going to say, "Don't call me Kitty," and Charlie took her hand before she could finish and pulled her towards Angie, who was waving both arms. She began walking before she toppled over. She was being led by the hand like a child.
ほらほら、置いてかれちゃうわ。急がないと。
笑顔のシャーリー、母様よりも母のようなあなた。いつもと同じ。同じ？でもさっきは昨日みたいな顔をして。
Both her head and heart ached. The question changed from a mere doubt to a serious worry. What on earth was that expression? What could possibly make her... Then... Oh, the sun.
はしゃぎすぎて転ばないのよ、アーシェ。芝は転びやすいですからね。
しませんよーだ。やっぱり綺麗。ほら、メアリー。
She spun around while looking up at the sky. As if to erase the doubt in Mary's heart, Angie smiled and cheered and twirled around. Angie wasn't the only thing trying to put her at ease. The rays of sunlight pouring down from the sky. She could also see huge gaps between the clouds. London's miracle, one of the regions where the strange phenomenon appeared. Only this place, in Hyde Park, in the ruins of the Crystal Palace, had been granted the blessings of these two miracles.
私は空を見上げる。ロンドンで唯一の空の隙間を。
They couldn't see what the old man spoke of. It was only more sunlight flowing through the gaps between the clouds. They knew what the beautiful sky referred to. They'd seen the pictures in the British Museum.
老人たちが言うもの、子供たちがおとぎ話として語るもの。青色の空、それは美しく、青、この隙間からは見えないけれど。でも、私は隙間が好き。
Skimagaski. The warm light poured down and made her forget the London air's chill. Around her were more than just the middle and upper class gentlemen and ladies befitting Hyde Park. There were even lower class people with their families. Many different people gathered underneath this radiance, including many foreigners. Everyone must have been in awe since they stopped talking. They looked up at the sky and let time pass. A miracle. Everyone felt that way. If they set one foot outside the Crystal Palace ruins, they wouldn't be able to see the gaps in the sky. That made it feel even more miraculous. Even if they looked at the same sky from somewhere else, they would only see vestiges of those rays of sunlight. This was the only place they could see it, the place where the Crystal Palace used to be. What is the Crystal Palace? She remembered that the Times and various scientific publications mentioned a theory from University of Paris giving optical reasons for it. Since when is the Times a scientific publication?
でも、
Or do I mistake it for something else? But, Mary thought, isn't there some other, more mysterious reason for it? Something other than the word miracle? For instance, yes, like a fairy tale. Something to back up the children's rumor that you could see the blue sky through the gaps.
噂。思いかけて頭を振る。おとぎ話なんてないわ。
Modern civilization, filled with ancient technology, had no place for fairy tales and rumors. Why not? The atmosphere wasn't the breath of fairies, but a chemical compound. The ground wasn't a turtle's back, but part of a planet. If any fairy tales or rumors were to come alive, they would only do so on paper. Only when ink danced across plain white paper could dreams and fairy tales become real. That was the one part Mary had trouble agreeing with. She accepted science, but she couldn't reject dreams.
ねえねえ、メアリー、シャーリー、もう少ししたらハワードも来れるって。一緒してもいい？
Oh, that sounds kinda dirty. Angie had a small, pretty engine phone in one hand and asked shyly. Mary shrugged her shoulders, nodded, and Charlie looked surprised.
まあ、アーシェ。そのエンジンフォンはもしかしてパリの？
まずかったかな。
ティファニーね、ティファニー。ミスター・ハワードからの贈り物かしら。
そうだよ。ハワードがくれたの。ティファニー？
パリの宝飾ブランドなの。エンジンフォンの外装も最近は手掛け始めたって聞いてはいたけれど、そう、贈り物に。
パリってパリ？それってすごいのじゃないかしら。
Paris was a synonym for splendor. Anything from a jewelry brand in Paris must have been expensive. Her focus on the sky was pulled back down to the ground. If Angie was given that as a gift then.
うわ、ほんと宝石が散りばめてある。すごい。
これガラスじゃないの？ガラスだよ。
ダイヤね。ダイヤモンドです、これは。
By the way, I just noticed. Her golden eye looks like a dragon's eye, doesn't it?
ほんと？
地質学の講義でサンプルを見たもの。ダイヤね。
本当かな？ダイヤかな？
すごいわ、ミスターハワード。さすがね。恋ってすごい。
That just means he has the money.
これは、あれね。
Shock and embarrassment had Mary at a loss for words. She cleared her throat.
また二人の暑さに当てられちゃうことになりそうね。
Yeah, why is that? She said that to Charlie, pulling herself together. No. Oh, the music changed. But she wasn't there. What? Where'd she gone? Charlie should have been standing right next to her, but she wasn't. Mary thought it strange and began to look around when...
いた。
Mary saw her talking under the shade of a tree nearby. Who was she talking to? Looking closely, Charlie was alone under that tree. She had her engine phone in one hand as she talked. She had a social type engine phone with a large circuit memory and better overall quality than the common type. It was a little big for a portable device.
シャーリー、誰と何を話してるの？
Mary's spirits fell. Again, Charlie's expression was the same as yesterday, the same as a moment ago. A dark, gloomy expression.
心配だよね。
Angie whispered softly. Mary was taken slightly by surprise.
アーシェ。アーシェリか。勘のいい、頭のいい子。いつも子供扱いしてしまうけれど、アーシェはいつだって鋭くて。
メアリは噂聞いた？
噂って。
違うの。怖い方じゃなくてね。チャペック先生の噂。
Rumors about Professor Chapek? That could be
知
interesting.
らない。先生のどんな噂？
先生、シャーリーに
What？
求愛してるんだって。シャーリーはそんな気ないのに。
Of course she
日
wouldn't.
にちおきに花を送ってくるとか。
シャーリーのお屋敷の玄関先、いくつもの花瓶を思い出す。
もう何ヶ月かになるんだって。でもシャーリー、全然そんな素振りなくて。だから、ただの噂かなって思ってたんだけど。
Well, she just should keep saying no.
昨日の様子見てたら、やっぱり本当なのかなって。
Angie's voice went quiet. Her expression darkened as well. Her voice was like the sunlight pouring from the sky, and yet here it withered away.
アーシェ。
The sensation of one's heart being crushed. Mary had been lost in thought for so long that she hadn't realized Angie had. She had noticed. Angie had, just like Mary herself had.
メアリはシャーリーから何か聞いた？先生に困ってるとか。
何も。
アーシェもだよ。だからね、噂は噂のままなんだけど。
So is that Chapek guy some kind of stalker? Then maybe you should call the police. A rumor of love. It made sense for Mr. Heinz Hager, but Professor Chapek just didn't fit at all. It wasn't quite as bad as a parent and child, but their ages were terribly far apart. And more importantly, if the rumor was true, she couldn't imagine Charlie would stay silent about it. Well, age doesn't matter as long as you have money.
だって私たちに秘密なんて何も。
私たちの間にはね。
Why is her face burnt out? Not only her face.
私たちの間に秘密はないの。例えば、怖い影の大男が空を覆ったって。
Scary shadow man.
私たちはずっと一緒。私たちは仲良しのままよ。私たち、もしも世界が。
そう、ずっと以前のこと、私は確かに覚えてる。
Her right eye felt strange, even though that wasn't a daydream just now. It was different than usual, and she clearly remembered what she saw, but despite that, tears flowed from her right eye. Angie touched her hand, saying it was alright. A warm hand, just like Charlie's. Then,
ごめんなさい二人とも。ちょっと急な用事ができてしまってお見合わせはするから。
what did they talk about on the phone?
ミスター・ハワードによろしくね。それじゃあ。
That's suspicious.
シャーリー、表情の陰りをうつむきがちに隠して。
Isn't the looking down what makes her expression dark? Something definitely felt wrong. Charlie had never failed to notice tears in Mary's right eye before. But right now she was looking down, not making eye contact. She did notice because her eyes were on her feet.
シャーリー、メアリーがまた赤学院に行かないといけないの。お手伝いしないといけないことがあって。だからごめんね二人とも。用事ならアーシェも手伝う。メアリーも一緒にみんなでやろう。私だけでいいの。二人は週末をちゃんと楽しんでいてね。
She said that.
あなたは笑顔を浮かべる。いつもと変わらない明るい笑顔。でもねシャーリー、ダメよ。放ってなんておけない。
The smile that always put them at ease. Now, and only now, it felt like a rejection. Let me be alone, it said. I'm sorry, it said. It was the same expression as usual, but not the same. It made them feel pressured. Angie softly whispered, "What do we do?" Tugged at Mary's sleeve and looked up as if about to cry.
任せて。
小さく私はアーシェに告げて。
It seems Mary has a plan.
待ってシャーリー、私も行っていいかしら。赤学院なら私も用があるから。
もちろんそんなのは嘘。
Of course it's a lie. But it's a good lie. So what will happen now? Let's find out next time on Shikkoku no Sharnoth. What the beautiful memories. So thanks for watching, and until next time, bye bye.